Hi, this is Karis, and before we get into this week's episode, I just want to do a correction from last week. Last week, I said that Newfoundland and Labrador was below Nova Scotia, which is wrong. Sorry about that. I wasn't looking at a map. So, that being said, let's get into this week's episode. Hello.
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 Hello. It's me.
You're looking for. And welcome to So
Much
History, aka
M
H
podcast. Today. Oh, I'm Rachel.
I'm Karis. And I'm Claire. We are your host at 11.
Today, we're going to be talking about some ancient sites that are really cool. And the way that they're built were crazy, especially for the time and the technology that we think that they had.
And there are some remaining questions.
And I do want to give a little disclaimer. So the way I kind of set up this episode is I'm going to go over each of these sites and then kind of talk about how the most likely method of how they were built and what that is. But then I'm also going to go into some conspiracy theories. And I just want it to be known that the conspiracy theories I'm sharing for fun, just because I thought they're interesting. But I do not believe the conspiracy theories. I believe in
science.
The more practical way. But I just thought learning about these conspiracy theories was super interesting. So that's my disclaimer.
She thinks conspiracy theories are fun, but doesn't get carried away and believes science.
Exactly. Now we'll jump right into it, and we're going to start with probably one of the most well-known monuments in the world, the pyramids. So the pyramids were built from the start of the Old Kingdom age, which is around 2686 BC, until the end of the Ptolemaic period, which I believe I'm pronouncing that right, which was around 20 BC. The most famous pyramid is one of the Giza pyramids, which is known as the Great Pyramid, and it stands more than 455 feet tall and was built in the span of 85 years between 2589 and 2504 BC. So
wait, I just realized I was going to say that's 4 stories, but then I realized that's 4D stories.
Yeah.
That's so tall.
It's huge.
I also have a question.
Sure.
I always have a question. But
what's new?
Claire's banned from questions. But if they were building these as tombs, because a lot of them are buried in it, would they just start building them when they're born if it takes them 80 years to build? Or would they just be this pyramid's newly finished, why don't you make your tomb here? I feel they would have the bodies for a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Remember they did mummify their dead bodies? I don't know exactly what their burial ritual was or anything like that, but I think also a lot of the pharaohs would commission to have their pyramids built. So they'd be like, oh, I want you to build me this pyramid. And then they would start building it.
And then they die and 50 years later they'd be put in it?
I guess. Or they would be put into it while it was getting built. But that seems disrespectful. So I'm not entirely sure. But also, something that I found in all my research is that they were getting built through this huge time span. And then Pharaoh started to realize that grave robbers were breaking in and disrupting the tomb and stealing. So then they just kind of said, oh, I don't want to be in a pyramid anymore. I want something else.
Dude, imagine being a pyramid grave robber.
I could
never. I remember there was a typing game on Typer Island when I was learning to type circa 2007. And it scared me so much because you had to type your way through a pyramid, and if you got caught, there was a mummy, and I literally got so scared. And I also could not watch the Mummy Scooby-Doo episode.
Really?
I was so scared.
Episode.
But
also, I love the Phineas and Ferb Mummy episode.
I don't think I ever saw that.
It's in the theme song.
I love Phineas and Ferb.
I know it's in the theme song, but I don't think I've seen the episode. But also, just imagine, not just being the grave robber, but being the pyramid builder, and you're, in the middle of the pyramid, and they're actually, no.
Yeah, there's actually unfinished pyramids in Egypt, and I kind of,
What, are they just, a mound of bricks that are flat on top?
Yeah, something like that, and I'll actually get into this a little bit more, but those unfinished pyramids give us insight as to how these pyramids were most likely actually built. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit later. I think I mentioned it in my outline. But anyways, the Great Pyramid was built in a span of 85 years, and the Great Pyramid contains at least 2.3 million stone blocks,
Oh my
which
god.
is a lot, especially like
They're
think about
pretty big blocks.
yeah, they're huge, and it's ancient Egypt too, so the technology they had was very little. And this is, I thought, really interesting and crazy. The base of the pyramid, of the Great Pyramid, has crazy accuracy and precision. It's almost completely level, and it's off by less than 2 centimeters. So that's very level, and they didn't have like levels back then. So
That's crazy. I just looked up unfinished pyramid too. I'm like,
yeah.
these look they almost look crazier unfinished.
Let me see.
Cause like I know like
Oh
just seeing
yeah.
the base, it looks so like I can see how level it is here.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They're
That means that their bricks must have been so precise too.
and then it's a perfect square, and its edges are lined to the compass within 3/60ths of a degree, which I think a degree is north. And also an important thing to remember about that is that throughout history, north has like moved. So
It has?
yeah, like Polaris, which is the North Star, like swaps every so often. I learned about it in my astronomy class. I didn't pay too much attention, so I'm not going to act like an astronomy expert, but I do know that north switches throughout time.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So back then, I think it was even probably more accurate than it is now. And they likely used their knowledge of triangles and right angles to accomplish all of this. You know, the one video showed like a right angle wood thing that they built, and then a pendulum thing swinging, and then they would line that up with the pyramid, and they would see if it like swayed to decide if it was level. So they kind of made their own levels.
Smart.
Yeah.
Did they invent a squared plus b squared equals c squared?
I have that in my notes. They,
you do?
Yeah. So
Pythagoras?
Pythagorean's theorem actually, or theory, did not exist at the time. So they just had really extensive knowledge of right angles and were able to figure it out.
Well, it's like the kind of thing where I'm like, sometimes people can figure it out without having the actual
Yeah.
Pythagorean theorem in front of them.
Yes. But, so yeah, and then, as I mentioned, it was an extraordinary level, and there's some wacky theories about how, but the most likely instance is that the Nile River flooded, and then they built canals to direct, or channels to direct the floodwater into where they wanted to build the pyramid, and then that leveled the sand.
Well, that's so smart.
Yeah.
That is so smart.
So that's
Well, 'cause
likely
they're
how
built
they did that.
On sand, right?
They were
And, you know,
so
Jesus
smart.
said,
They really were.
build your house on stone, not on sand. But they built on sand with stone.
Yeah, speaking of the stone, the Great Pyramid's core is made of more than 2 million blocks of rough yellow limestone, which is softer and easier to work than most stones, which is important to know because they didn't have steel or any kind of metal, really. They only had copper, which isn't the strongest metal, but it would be able to cut through limestone, especially if they had an abrasive, such as sand, which they did have, and they used that to, like, sand down the limestone and, like, use a copper saw. Yeah,
They used the sand to sand stuff down.
But the pyramids also contained granite, so, and I get into that a little bit later, which is a lot. Obviously, it has, like, quartz in it, which makes it a much more difficult stone to deal with, and
It would
malleable.
raise
So you
the
could have,
market
like-
value.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you could have a granite countertop in here.
in your pyramid, yeah.
I love the granite countertops. It's a must for my death place.
And the other crazy thing to remember is that they didn't have wheels at this time. Like, the wheel was not invented, and they had to lug these heavy stones across the desert. So I'm going to talk
my
about
God.
how they did that as well. So back to the granite. So copper couldn't cut through granite. So what they just did is they took like this sphere tool and they smashed the granite repeatedly in order to make these like giant alleyways within the pyramid. So it's crazy. It must have taken so much time.
Yeah,
Also,
So they just made like caves through the pyramid.
yeah. And also the granite was nearly 1,000 kilometers away from Giza. My apologies.
1,000 kilometers?
That is far.
So, if you were wondering how they did that, it's also suspected that the flooding of the Nile helped them out again, and that they used that to float the granite down the Nile to the pyramids.
They really were like, Mother Nature tried to get us, but like, gotcha.
It's 621.371 miles
No, 'cause
away.
I was thinking about it, I was like,
in a time before wheels.
like, we couldn't even like row 2K without being like, that was the hardest thing ever. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy. They really were able to utilize their resources. And even just the limestone, like yellow limestone blocks. Yeah, yellow limestone blocks, those are still heavy. So if they didn't have a wheel and, you know, the river's not always the best option, how did they transport these stones? Well, there's this famous diagram depicting sleds that were used, and 172 men would, like, hold onto ropes and drag these giant monuments across the sand, which would create a lot of friction, so you would think that you wouldn't be able to do it, but they were super smart, so they had people on the sleds pouring water onto the sand to reduce friction as they dragged these giant monuments.
They, like, invented geometry, physics, like, what?
Am I stupid, or I feel like wet sand would be harder to get through than dry sand?
No, but think about when you're at the beach and it's, like, low tide and the sand's wet. It's easier to, like, run on. But when it's dry, yeah.
Well, because I was just thinking, like, it would... I don't even know what I was thinking.
It reminds me of Santa's sleigh.
Yeah, it's crazy because the stones weigh at least 2 tons each, and even with today's cranes and construction equipment, building the pyramids would be really hard, so...
Well, they probably learned, I feel like, through trial and error, but the fact that they got it down to, like, a science, that's crazy.
There are no surviving building plans as to how these pyramids were constructed, so because of this, no one knows for sure how they were built, and a lot of theories have arisen, some a lot more credible than others. So I'm going to present you guys with what I think and what most people believe as the most accurate, most widely accepted theory, which is that they used ramps. And this goes back to the unfinished pyramids, because some of the unfinished pyramids have ramp ruins that have been found, like, alongside them, so that, like, indicates...
So this is very credible?
Yeah, so it's very credible. And it was likely a wraparound ramp, so it spiraled around the pyramid, because otherwise you would have to put more material into building the ramps than the pyramid, or a close amount of material. And also, it's likely that for, like, the top peak and the topmost layers, they used levers and, like, ropes and pulleys.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, because I feel like once you get to the top layers, you're saying these are 40 stories, and these limestones are so heavy. Like, imagine and wrap around, that's even more area to cover. Like, imagine carrying the limestone all the way up 40 stories of a wraparound pyramid.
I would love to see, like, the format, though, of these towns. Like, I know that's random, but I'm thinking about, like, an unfinished pyramid with still these ramps on them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, could you imagine just walking to school and being like, oh,
let's
there's
go.
the pyramid.
Like, I feel like that's something like the juvenile kids would, like, go, like, climb up and, like, drink instead of learning about, like, their Egyptian gods and all that stuff. Yeah.
They get drunk on the pyramid. You know, people go to the water towers.
Yeah. They're like, let's have that Egyptian teenage childhood.
Yeah.
And or they'll be like, I feel like I missed out on my teenagehood getting drunk on the pyramid.
Let's go to the top of the pyramid, watch the stars, watch the town.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then also the important thing about the tip is that it was, like, less than 14% or some, I don't remember the exact number of the materials is used for the top of the pyramid. So it's like the least amount of work is the most difficult amount of work. So
yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah.
Also, these pyramids used to be, like, shiny, and they had this, like, fancy, I forget what it was, but the limestone was, like, shinier, but they'd been weathered. But they would, like, reflect the sun, which I think is really cool. So they were, like, these shiny, huge monuments that glistened, and they were supposed to, like, show the rays of the sun, because I believe Egyptian culture really, like, loved the god of the sun. I forget what his name was.
They must have great eyes, though, because as someone who has very light eyes, my eyes could never, like, walk around and be like, oh my god, the sun is everywhere.
And they didn't have sunglasses.
Yeah, and they especially did not have polarized sunglasses. Yeah. I would have eye cancer so fast. So, like, they must, like, Egyptian people of, like, Egyptian descent must have great, strong eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, look, she found
we'll
the
put a
shinier
picture on our Instagram.
Here's, like, one.
Oh my gosh, that must be so gorgeous, though.
I know.
It, like,
imagine being able to see that,
like, they're the
in
color
real time.
To give people context, if we're going to keep this in, it's, like, the color of, like, the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
But, like, imagine that reflecting the sun.
But reflective. Yeah, and shiny.
That sounds gorgeous.
So now we're gonna jump into some of the conspiracy theories that I found. So the first one was aliens.
I feel like I'm watching Ancient Aliens
Yeah.
on History Channel.
I tried to watch that show and then I couldn't get into it. Also, I don't know. Anyways,
I feel like it's a little problematic.
yeah, I was about to
but-
say the show is kind of problematic because it kind of discredits some cultures that I think already get not enough credit and kind of get
Yeah.
forgotten. And then it's like, oh, they're really impressive monuments that they built. They didn't even build, like aliens did that. And I talk a little bit about
Well,
that
also
in one of my
sorry.
monuments from Peru. No, go ahead.
What also discredits, like, I don't really know who does the work on this, like archaeologists and like I don't know what anthropologists do.
Mhm.
I'm kind of
It also
stupid.
discredits
Who like come up with the theories and like
Yeah.
actually like study this.
it also discredits like slave labor. Like I'm like
Yeah.
literally I'm pretty sure it's Jewish slaves built these.
The pyramids.
Yeah.
That's actually, I get into that in this because
Yeah. So
slaves did not build the pyramids, contrary to popular belief.
really? Because I was
Yeah.
gonna
Because
say
people
I
will
heard-
use that as like a little political thing.
It's contrary to popular belief, and it's like newly found research that shows that. I don't know how newly found, but it's like a new discovery that's pretty well accepted because they found, and I'll talk about this more later, but they found that they had a bunch of like established villages around the pyramids for like the craftsmen's families and everything, and also a lot of the people who built the pyramids are built in like are buried in the lowest section of the pyramid, like that's where the bodies
Oh.
are, and they would never
slaves would never
yeah,
be respected
slaves would
that
not be
way.
respected that way. So,
So they-
although slaves may have like helped like lug everything across, the actual like craftsmanship and the building of it was not done by slaves but by experienced craftsmen.
Okay.
So the slaves would do the lugging for 621 miles.
I'm
of-
assuming, but I don't know for sure.
But the people who actually did the hands-on labor were considered respected as
Like the
being their
most,
craft.
yeah, like the most sought after craftsmen and stuff like that. And
That's interesting.
building the pyramid was like such an honor for them because it, like, there's a whole thing about like a king's like soul and spirit,
Yeah.
and they wanted to savor that and protect that because it was supposed to help them. I'm not sure if I'm getting all of this correct, but so in order to be put in charge of like helping to create their place of rest was a huge honor that they loved. And also if you look inside of it, like the detail and the meticulation of the pyramids is insane, and it had to have been done by people who that was their livelihood.
Honestly, like this is like a sidebar, but Egyptian artwork too, and just like I don't know if it was intended to be artwork, but just like all of it, it's so amazing to me that it holds up so well. Because when I lived in Montreal and then went in Boston too, at the end, both of their museums of fine art, both I guess you know how they pass around exhibits.
Yeah.
I don't know if they passed around the mummy exhibit or they just both happened to have mummy exhibits when I was there.
Yeah.
Like a couple months apart, but I got to see like mummies and just like the artwork, and I
That's
was like,
so
this
cool.
is so cool.
I think mummies
Well,
are
they
so
also-
cool.
Yeah, and their bodies were so small.
Yeah.
Like
Egyptians are so slept on as an ancient civilization. They created the first numeric system.
Yeah, they
Like
were
they
so
created
smart.
math.
and hieroglyphics look so cool.
Yeah, like and Egyptians, I think were so intelligent and really like we can tell with the pyramids.
They
Use their resources.
Yeah, and they must have known so much about the body because I heard somewhere, this might not be true because I heard this when I was very little, and of course when you're little you're like ew, but like I heard that they like before they mummify you they have to take out your organs, but I heard
think
they
so.
like figured out ways to do it without cutting you open. So like your brain, they would like take it out your nose, like they drain it or something,
gosh.
and it was all stuff that I was like, how
Well,
did they know
knew
that?
a
Yeah.
lot about medicine. Whenever I listen to This Podcast Will Kill You, shout out.
We'll put the link on our website.
They're always talking about like where these diseases or where like the remedy for them or where they're first documented came from, and like a lot of the times it comes from ancient Egypt.
That's so cool.
Like mad respect for Egyptian culture, like honestly.
yeah. Minus the slavery.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But back to the conspiracy theory of aliens. So some of the like reasons that people believe this, one, because people love aliens and think that that's cool, and love to speculate about that stuff.
I think that's the main reason.
That's probably the main reason. Also, I think the fact that it was like a super like shiny, like metallic-y reflective surface at the time it was built, like
It's kind
adds,
of like a UFO.
yeah, it like adds to that. Also because how people like can't fathom them being able to lift these giant like blocks up above them. You want to know who tweeted that aliens built the pyramids?
Kanye.
Elon Musk.
I'm not
I
surprised.
hate the most, I guess, accurate. It's not accurate, so it's not even the best word. But the best proof for the alien theory is that the speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second, and the geographic coordinates for the Great Pyramid are 29.9792458 degrees north. And so the conspiracy theories are like, is this a coincidence? They think not.
But how does that even support that aliens
Because
exist in the
I guess
first place?
aliens travel at the speed of light.
How do we
But
know
this
that?
is
though?
all like speculation. Like,
Yeah.
I know the government like really in 2020 they were like, oh yeah, aliens exist or something like that, and
Yeah.
nobody cared because
they
2020.
confirmed the existence of UFOs, I think.
Yeah.
But
Which an
UFOs are-
unidentified flying object could literally just be a strange meteoroid.
Oh, well,
Like
never
it's just
mind.
something that you can't.
I was just
I
gonna
think-
say, like, I thought they, like, confirmed, like, maybe they have some form of, like, life on other planets that they weren't telling us about, but they
But
can't
I
even tell us,
do think that there's
apparently.
life on other
Agreed.
planets. I just don't know if it's intelligent life.
Well,
I
if it's
agree,
this, and more
100%.
advanced than us, that they, you know, sent these pyramids down and then
Yeah.
was, like, peace out and never came back. Like, that makes no
Also,
sense.
Yeah.
I think aliens could be just like us. Like, maybe they're sitting on their planet being like, oh my god, these other, like, Earth is sending these androids at, well, they're not the androids, whatever,
Yeah.
UFOs at us, and they're gonna kill all of us. But, like, we're sitting doing the same thing with them. Like, I just genuinely think
Or
the
they could
alien
also
thing...
be a single-celled organism.
Like, I just
Yeah.
think the alien thing is, like, thinking they're little green men who are gonna probe all of us is so far-fetched.
I know. And I also, there's like planets or things that replicate Earth very well in like other galaxies because we live in the Milky Way galaxy, and like in other galaxies there's planets that are very close to Earth. One of them is like Kepler 4 something. I did a research project on it for my astronomy class, so I should remember the name, but I don't.
Shout
But
out.
Kepler has some of the most Earth-like qualities, and it's a possibility that maybe something could be living there. So I think that's cool. The other piece of evidence for the aliens was if you measure, I guess, the perimeter of the pyramid and multiply it by 2. I'm not exactly sure if it's by 2 or if it's just if you measure the perimeter of the pyramid. It equals 365 point something, which is the exact, like, astronomical year. And this was,
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know, people use that as their evidence for aliens, which I've already said, you know, is probably not likely. But a quick way to debunk that in, like, 2 seconds is that the Egyptians didn't even use inches as a form of measurement. So there was no
Yeah.
way of them knowing that inches would be created because inches have nothing to do with anything mathematic. They're literally based off of like a king's
Also,
something.
yeah.
So that is just so debunked because Egyptians used like a cubic measurement, and they would have never known that inches, which has no mathematical basis, would have been created.
Also, that's like, honestly, if America's the only country that uses inches, I don't think the aliens use it.
Yeah, I would agree. So another conspiracy theory is time travel.
I don't like that one either. Because it
Um,
discredits all the hard work and innovation of an entire nation of people.
yeah, an entire civilization, an entire like group of people who actually use their brains. Like, just because they didn't have modern day technology doesn't mean that they didn't have technology and weren't innovative and creative.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even think modern day technology can hinder some
I
innovation because you're just so reliant on it. And so they had to think outside the box to create new things.
But even, like, they're kind of, like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like the theory that they use ramps and pulley, like a pulley system, it doesn't discredit, like, I'm not trying to discredit what they did, but it's more believable.
yeah.
Like, it's still incredible how they did it, but it's, like, I still believe that it could have happened. Like, to just say, like, oh, like, some time travelers must have come and... what are they gonna come with a whole construction crew? Like, that makes
Yeah.
no
Yeah, and why would a
sense.
time travel be like, oh, let's go to ancient Egypt, to the desert, and build a sand pyramid for their kings to be buried in?
Also,
Yeah,
Egyptians,
that's stupid.
I don't know much about ancient Egypt, but from what I know is they rely very much on visuals.
Yeah.
And I feel like we would have seen a picture of a crane or something.
Yeah.
If that was true.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is some speculation that there's, like, crazy, like, images, but I think a lot of them were, like, spiritual drawings of their religion and, like, put pictures to their, like, religious beliefs. I'm so upset that I can't remember what the sun god in Egypt is called, because they talked about him a couple of times, but it's fine. Okay, and then the last theory that I have here, conspiracy theory, isn't really about how the pyramids were built, but more about what's inside of them. And the theory is that what's inside of them is lost technology. So basically, there has never been a body found in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Giza, okay. So people are wondering, like, what's really in it. And then I just want to do a little disclaimer. There's speculation that there's a hidden crypt which has the body of the king. I forget which king it was.
King Tut.
No, not King Tut. Different king.
Pharaoh.
Maybe Pharaoh. But I think a pharaoh is a king.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but whatever. So there's a secret crypt. People think, like, this is a more recent discovery that historians believe that there's probably a secret crypt within the Great Pyramid that has the mummy in it. And the other thing to remember is that there was a bunch of grave robbers, so who would go in and loot the pyramids for their jewels and the bodies. So there was likely that there was one in there at one point. If there's no secret crypt, that there was one in there at one point and then it was stolen. So
well, and it's been a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's unreasonable.
Yeah. Well, because think about it, like, looters were so common in the time. And also the fact that it's sealed is ridiculous because they had there's, like, historical accounts of it being unsealed. So it's very likely that it was just stolen. Anyways, I also want to just make a disclaimer that the site that I found this conspiracy theory on is definitely not a credible site. So any information that I'm about to read may not be accurate.
It was a conspiracy
But
theory.
it was a conspiracy theory site. So I'm just going to read it to you so this way you know it, because I thought it was interesting. So I guess in the 1990s, a secret door was discovered inside one of the Great Pyramids with red writing on the outside. And Zahi Hawass, not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right, also not entirely sure about who that is, allowed a robot drill to drill a small hole in the door and peek inside. He then announced that nothing was found, but refused to give the videotape as proof. And the Egyptian government then forbade researchers from abroad to look for themselves. So this spawned a host of conspiracy theories that the chamber had great treasures in it, alien corpses that would disprove religion, or Hitler, Steve Jobs, and Jimmy Hoffa were alive and in the tomb.
Playing cards in the secret chamber.
That is what the conspiracy theory site said.
It said they were playing cards. Like,
yes, that's what the site said. Okay.
Oh my god.
Also, it said that there was advanced technology hidden inside the pyramid from, like, the ancient times, and that they had hid their technology inside the pyramid. The other thing that says that it was, like, a great energy source was also hidden in the pyramid.
Also,
I'm
wait.
not gonna lie, like, I don't know what they're hiding in there, but I also don't even care if the Egyptian government's like, don't touch it, because they're probably like, don't ruin the inside of our pyramid. This is an ancient artifact.
It's one of the 8 or 7 wonders of the world.
If they had to drill a tiny hole in, they're probably like, don't tear down the whole wall.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's kind of like that prehistoric cave in France with all the drawings and everything. Mm-hmm. Like, they have to seal it, because if they unseal it, it's going to destroy everything on the inside.
Yeah.
And, like, they don't want people to go in.
Mm-hmm. And the debunk for this conspiracy theory is, as I said, grave robbers and such, which I just think is the most likely scenario. So, but it is kind of cool to think about what could actually be in these pyramids if it's not dead kings. Like, is there something that they're hiding? I personally don't think so, but it's kind of fun to think about that kind of stuff and let your imagination run wild, as long as you don't put too much weight on your imagination. So, the less far-fetched myth or theory about how the pyramids were built, and this we discussed earlier, was that slaves built them. And as I said earlier, recent discoveries show that they were in fact not built by slaves but by skilled workers, and that there was villages that were built for these advanced workers and builders and their families, which had, like, high dollar shops and stuff for that time. Like, they had a mall. Yeah, they have like an ancient Egyptian mall per se, and nice restaurants and shops and stuff like that. So the next site.
Oh wait, I just have
Yeah.
something to say.
Of course.
I looked it up. The sun god's name is Ra.
Yes,
Is that it?
Ra,
It's pronounced Ra.
Okay, so the next crazy, wacky, historical, ancient site/monument that we're going to be talking about is the Nazca Lines. So the Nazca Lines are a group of very large geoliths made in the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. And these lines were created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by people making depressions or shallow incisions in the desert floor and then removing pebbles and leaving differently colored dirt exposed. And the lines are huge. Some of them are simple and some of them are complex. And these complex or simple lines reveal different shapes. And they span over 1,300 kilometers.
Kilometers.
Kilometers? Kilometers?
Kilometer. You can say
Kale,
either.
tomato, tomato, potato, potato. But these lines are so cool. They're also continuous lines, which I think is important to mention. So, it's like drawing a continuous line on your piece of paper without picking up your pen. So very impressive.
Oh yeah, what?
And the lines are 4 to 6 inches deep.
If they were doing it in sand, how would that stay there? Because I feel like sand just kind of gets blown away.
Well, they were removing the top layer of reddish-brown iron oxide coated pebbles to reveal
pebbles.
yellow-gray subsoil. So it's not sand, it's subsoil.
How big are they?
I don't know
They're
why I thought it was in sand.
They're 1,300 kilometers. That's really big.
They cover, Google an image of them. We'll post images on our website. Yeah, they're humongous.
This looks like Spider-Man. Wait.
Yeah, they're insane.
These look so cool.
The lines form shapes that are best seen from air, but you can also go to nearby foothills and other high surrounding places to see them. So how did they build these without airplanes?
Mm-hmm.
So it's likely that they went to these higher ground areas and used that to get an idea of what the shape was looking like. However, there's also artifacts of these images drawn on a smaller scale. And it's not for every image, but it was found for a couple of them. So we're assuming that they used those as a plan to draw their images.
So imagine they had walkie-talkies, one person's on the hill.
Yeah.
These look so cool.
I have no idea. I think it's impressive. I can't even direct people to form a certain letter for a picture. How they do those overhead pictures that form shapes.
Yeah.
I would never even be able to figure out one of those, so I don't know how they figured out this.
Well, they're very symmetrical.
Yeah, they are. And there are 100 of simple line and geometric shapes and more than 70 zoomorphic designs, including hummingbirds, spiders, fish, condo, herons, monkeys, lizards, a dog, and a human with a weird bubble head, which I'll get into a little bit later because there's a conspiracy theory surrounding that. Big surprise.
I'm guessing aliens?
Yes.
Maybe humans just evolved to have smaller skulls or something. But, aliens works too.
Or they just, drew it weird.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up, Darwin.
But it's also widely speculated what the significance of these lines are. It's even more speculated why they built the lines versus how they were built. And some think they were interpretations of constellations, but a more credible and widely accepted interpretation is that they were used in religious rituals, especially those centered around water and fertility. I don't know why, but I guess that's what.
How deep are the lines?
They're 4 to 6 inches deep in the soil.
They could put water in it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I also think the way they're pointed at certain things that indicate water, I don't know. But that's the most widely accepted is that they use them in religious rituals. So, conspiracy theories. The first one is that these drawings are a call to aliens. Basically, people think that they were drawn to get aliens to come here to help us with something. I don't know.
Yeah, they drew animals to get aliens to come help us.
I'm already done with these aliens.
A hummingbird was an SOS, guys.
The other theory was more about how they got them. And some people think that aliens helped direct them where to draw the lines because the aliens had UFOs so they could see the pictures from above the ground.
Whoever decided that aliens had UFOs needs to be fired.
They need to be canceled.
Jail time.
Another theory is that aliens just straight up drew them. And some people, for evidence that aliens were involved in this process in any way, is that the drawing of the human has a bubble head. And so some people believe that this is actually a drawing of an alien or someone in a spacesuit. And there's also an elongated skull that dates back to the time of the Nazca lines that some believe to be an alien skull. So it has like a really weird shape. But guess what? There's a logical explanation for that. And that is that the Nazcas performed what is called artificial cranial deformation.
Oh.
And that is a practice, for anyone who doesn't know, that involves binding the skulls of infants when they're pliable to create an altered skull shape that lasts into adulthood. So that's likely the example for that. But if you are looking it up, you can just Google Nazca elongated skull and you'll see the pictures of it. The final thing that people use is that there was a 3-fingered mummy, because the Nazca culture also did mummies, that some people think is an alien. However, this is likely a hoax that was created by forgers from a real mummified Nazca remains.
Well, also, like, I'm not, like, it could be a hoax, but even if it existed, like, some people have 6 digits, and you don't see people being like, you're an alien.
So, Karis, you'll be happy to hear this. We're done with the alien theories.
Yay. Well, I just think it's like, maybe people back in the day, like thousands of years ago, possessed different traits that we don't have now because they evolved to their surroundings and adapted. You know, like, what if it was the opposite?
Or they did cranial deformation practices.
Well, I'm saying, like, what if it was the opposite? What if they did all of this now and they looked back and they were like, there's no way they invented computers. It was definitely aliens.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I see what you're saying.
You have such little faith in your own species that you think that they couldn't come up with it. Like, somebody had to come up with the technology we have now. They just...
Current day us can't think of it doesn't mean that people way back when couldn't think of it.
Yeah, like, they might not have had the same, like, system of numbers and letters that we do now, but that doesn't mean that they were stupid.
Yeah,
they might not have had the same advancements in math, but that doesn't mean they were stupid.
They had other ways of figuring out. They had the same brains that we have. So.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't need... Like, with the pyramids, like, they were like, oh, it's a perfect square.
Yeah.
And they have Pythagorean theorem and right triangles. How dare they? I'm like, I don't know.
They could still, like, eyeball it.
They didn't need trigonometry to figure it out.
Well, maybe they had special rulers or something.
Well, they had a cubic measure, or not cubic. It was, like, circic or cerbic, whatever. It was something. They had a form of measurement. It just wasn't what we have today.
Yeah.
But we'll go back to our cool sites. The next one is Chandbaudi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that is in India. I do want to also say, I did Google how to pronounce all of these, but I am just so bad at pronouncing things, so please don't attack me. Anyways, Chandbaudi is a deep 4-sided well with a large temple on the back face of the building. It was built around 900 AD, and it was built to solve the area's drought problem. King Chanda ordered it to be built. The structure is roughly 13 stories high, but this is the most interesting part in my opinion. It's dug into a V shape nearly 100 feet below the Earth's surface, which I think is crazy because they didn't have anything to like blow up the ground to like get it 100 feet below Earth's surface. I don't know how they dug that. I just think that's so impressive.
Well, and it's...
Yeah.
Looking at it, it's very intricate, even with like the way it's designed.
It looks like, this is so dumb of me, but it reminds me of, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a part when they go to, like, this underground temple thing where the airbenders used to live before there was an airbender genocide, and for some reason, it reminds me of that. And, like, obviously, Avatar: The Last Airbender is an animated show, but it just looks so cool.
It is. And I think it does look super cool. Maybe we could, like, build a sandcastle of one of these for, like, our YouTube.
I doubt we could.
I don't think we'd be able to, but that would just give more kudos to them for being able to pull this off.
Except, is it really? I'm not sure that we're...
that impressive. Yeah. But it was 100 feet below the Earth's surface with an estimated 3,500 perfectly leveled steps. So I just think that's crazy impressive.
Oh my god, that's a lot of steps.
And imagine running stairs on that.
Oh my god.
And King Chanda devoted it to the goddess of joy and happiness upon its completion.
You're not gonna try and say her name?
No. Yeah, there's a name that I have in the notes, and I'm just not gonna even attempt because I'm gonna butcher it so bad. So, details on its construction are very impressive and still remain a mystery. But the state of Rajasthan, I don't know.
Sounds right.
Rajasthan, which is where this monument, or I guess it's a monument, I don't know, where this site is structure is extremely arid, and the structure of Chand Bodhi was intended to conserve as much water as possible. And ancient Indian scriptures make references to constructions of wells, canals, tanks, and dams, and their efficient operation and maintenance. So this site combined many of these operations to allow for easy access to local water. So basically they used all of their knowledge to make this one humongous well. And at the bottom of the well, the air remains 5 to 6 degrees cooler than at the surface.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so Chand Bori was used as a community gathering place for locals during periods of intense heat.
Would they go swimming?
Yeah, and if it was like dried out, they would still go to it for like AC basically. And one side of the wall has a Havil Pavilion. I'm not pronouncing that right. Again, I'm so sorry. Which is a resting room for the royals. So I just included this because I thought it was pretty cool. Basically, like the common people, like everyone in this community would go to this structure during intense heat, and they would all chill and just have like a heat stroke party in this cool, giant, crazy monument. So the conspiracy theory for this one is that ghosts built it. And there aren't really any real explanations attached to this or real evidence as to how this was built, which is why it's so difficult to explain. But that is the theory, is that ghosts built it, and there's not even like evidence to back up the theory, but that's what we have. So our last site is the Sacsayhuaman site in Peru.
When Claire and I were little, we watched a video about, where is this? This is about like the Aztecs, right?
It's in Peru.
It's in Peru?
And it's the Inca Empire, but it was before the Inca Empire.
Now I feel ignorant.
It's fine.
But we were watching like a documentary about something, and the man just, we didn't know, we'd never heard of this before, and he pronounced it wrong, I think. But he just goes, the first time I went to Sacsayhuaman, I was just so enamored by the sheer beauty. And we were like, yeah, sure you were. And we like literally said it all the time because we were like 8-year-olds. So we heard sexy woman and we were like, ah.
But the Sacsayhuaman monument is located in what was the capital of the Inca Empire. And the ancient city was called Cusco, Peru. But it was built before the Inca Empire, so that's just important to know. So the stone fortress was built in 900 AD to 12,000 AD. It was somewhere in that time period, which was before the Inca Empire, as I said. And some of the stones used to make the fortress weigh as much as 200 tons.
Whoa.
So that's a lot considering the song that we sing.
Stone?
Yes. And the song that we sing is, if a 10-ton
Truck crashes into us, to die by your side is such a heavenly way to die.
You're welcome.
Yes, that song link will be on our website. So anyways, as I was saying, these stones are 200 tons. And they were also
Intricately?
Yes, thank you. Intricately cut to fit into one another very tightly, keeping the wall up for centuries without the use of any mortar or grout of any kind. You know, those lines in the brick walls, they didn't even have that. So they like held these walls together just by cutting the stones so perfectly for each other. And they were believed to have been built by people who carried the stones from a quarry several miles away, and each stone was likely tied to a rope and pulled to its final destination. So imagine tying a rope to a 200-ton stone and dragging it several miles and then
I
lifting
don't
it
even
to
think
build
I
these.
could drag it 1 foot.
If you want to see us trying to pick up like 10-pound rocks, watch our video on our YouTube channel.
With
We
the
don't-
Vikings,
We
yeah.
don't do well.
We
like,
do not.
We could never be. Who were these people?
The
Is
I
this
mean,
the
it was before the
pre-Incas.
Pre-Incas, but I guess
the pre-Incan people.
yeah, the pre-Incan
Yeah, we can never do it.
Yes. But so the fortress was so impressive. I think this is so interesting. The fortress was so impressive that when the Spanish invaded and took over Cusco in the mid 1500 AD, they believed that Sacsayhuaman was built by demons because of how huge it was and ordered it to be taken down. However, much of it remains intact because the stones were simply too heavy for the Spaniards to move and destroy.
Oh my god.
So they tried to like knock down this wall and they couldn't because the stones were too big, which I just think speaks volume to their building capabilities.
They were like, gotcha.
Yeah.
It
So-
just really shows that Satan did a really great job with this one.
Yes, he and his demons really took it away. So obviously the demons is one conspiracy theory that the conquistadors had.
Oh, these rocks are big.
Yeah, they're huge.
Like, they don't look that big, and then you see people next to it, and it's like, holy crap,
Mm-hmm.
these are huge.
So the conspiracy theory. Basically, the main one, the first one is that there's lost technology that's advanced or superior to ours, and that's how they built these.
They had a giant crane that they would use.
I don't know, but it's superior to ours, so it's technology that we couldn't even fathom.
They had teleportation.
Yeah, and they just like looked at the rock and they pointed at it and they said, "Vrr," and it reappeared perfectly.
In the perfect shape and
Yeah.
place.
Witchcraft.
The second one, and again, this is from even a less credible source than my first conspiracy theory source because I found this one in a conspiracy theory Facebook group.
Oh my god.
So,
the Facebook group is so mad at you right now.
Infiltrated the theorist.
so this theory is that there was a traveling group that traveled all throughout Peru who built all of their stone works, including Machu Picchu. And all
I
of
wanna
these...
go to Machu Picchu.
Me too. And all these, like Peru and a lot of South America is covered with amazing stone, ancient architecture that is very, like, the Nazca lines are in Peru. Like, all of these amazing monuments and things that we question how they were built. Basically, this conspiracy theories group's idea is that these people were so advanced and they traveled around and they built all of the indigenous, I don't know if indigenous people is the right word for this, but all the people native to Peru's crazy architecture that's so impressive. The theory is that these higher, more educated, more evolved people traveled around and then left them there
Yes.
for the people to then use to live and create a society from.
Because the people of Peru clearly couldn't do it themselves.
Yeah, and this is a very not credible source. And as I said, this goes back to the problem that we addressed with ancient aliens a little bit earlier in the episode, is a lot of these conspiracy theories and ancient alien theories and all this stuff undermine what these groups of people were able to do. And especially for Peru, I feel it's very upsetting that how widespread these conspiracy theories are, even though I do find them super interesting. This one especially about the traveling group just kind of annoyed me. But the also thing to remember is that the Spanish conquistadors came in and were like, demons built that. So a lot of this history is, again, as we addressed in one of our other episodes, influenced by Europeans who took over and just kind of invaded areas and enforced their beliefs and
just
whatever.
gave everyone disease because they were all gross.
Yeah. And also, a lot of their cool sites in Peru were plundered and destroyed
Yes, they had
by the
libraries
Spaniards. Yeah.
burned. And, like, imagine what we would have learned from that.
So it's just really sad about how this history of South America, or at least parts of South America, is just really forgotten and not at all taught. And not to end this episode on, like, a somber note or anything like that, but it's just, I think it's something to keep in mind. You know, the conspiracies are good fun, but also make sure you're giving credit to the people who actually built these and just admire the crazy effort that went into them, and try and educate yourself about maybe cultures and things that we don't learn about normally, like South American history. Also, I want to give a shout out to my brother because I asked him, I was like, what are crazy cool sites that don't make sense or like that people don't understand how we're built? And he said, look in South America, because first of all, South America is always forgotten about, and second of all, they have really cool sites. So thanks, Cole, for that, because that did help me with my research process. But I don't know, just when you're reading conspiracy theories, take a grain of salt. Make sure you're doing your own work to fact check things and just try and make yourself, an informed human being. But that's my podcast. That was this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you check out our website, our social media, all that good stuff.
It will all be, our website is somuchhistory.wixsite.com, right? No, it is not. This is Karis from the future editing, here to correct. It is actually smhpodcast.wixsite.com/home. That's where you can find it, or you can find it in the link tree on our Instagram bio. Sorry about the confusion. Back to the original outro.
Yeah, I think so.
And our Instagram is So Much History Podcast. You can find, and our website's linked there. So yeah, you should check that out. And until next week, this has been
So Much History Podcast. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Goodbye.
And you're perfect. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.